And I'm super shocked about this. In the US, we are currently seeing something which is, I would say, extremely dangerous. This is a complete change. And if Europe leaves this unanswered, we shouldn't underestimate as Europeans that we are quite inspiring for others. The hydrogen effect is there. They feel hydrogen is a competitor. They want the money for their grids. You need to inspire the decision makers. So we need to be super careful. And I warned the Commission very early. I said, this is not flying. This is not working.
Is there something that the entire hydrogen economy should be excited about?
Well, the next big thing definitely is this.
A warm welcome, Jorgo Chatzimarkakis, to our podcast, The Hydrogen Leader. I'm so happy to have you on the show.
Yes, I'm honored to be in your show. I've heard a lot of things, and so congratulations to have set it up. Honor for me to be here.
Oh, thank you very much. As you know, we try to inspire future hydrogen leaders, and we want to talk about broader topics like leadership, like personal growth, and obviously your unique views in the hydrogen economy. I want to start with a very provocative question. Are you the CEO of hydrogen in Europe?
Well, when I started 9 years ago, it definitely was a small little niche issue, the issue of hydrogen. It has become very prominent now. There are many people who influence that field, but I admit that without the push that also personally could give, and also based on Hydrogen Europe possibilities, we built that up, but it created a big community of more than 600 members.
Yes.
It wouldn't have been possible. Yes, we pushed a lot, but I am humble, and I'm the CEO of Hydrogen Europe, not of hydrogen.
Yeah, okay. So we know that you are very passionate. So what drives you, Jorgo? I listened to a speech that you gave 15 years ago in your parliament, and there you said you were passionate about building bridges. Are you still constructing bridges in the hydrogen economy?
Well, I'm a chap born in Duisburg in Germany, with a Greek father and a German mother from Eastern Germany. So she was a refugee. And I was used to build bridges from my earliest days. So between cultures, and Europe also fascinated me always, because if you start to build these bridges, Europe is a big project of building bridges. Now, the hydrogen sector, by some people, is underestimated. It's not just one technology. Hydrogen is an enabler for other technologies. This is what fascinates me about the hydrogen sector. So the enabling factor, the bridge building factor of hydrogen technologies for other technologies, to make them better, to make them more efficient, to make them be growing together, be linked, like, for instance, the electricity sector and the gas sector cannot be combined without hydrogen. This is what drives me. And so I found a very good sounding board in this hydrogen sector for my own conviction, building
for your passion. This is true, and you are showing this for many years. Coming back also to your principles, I guess, you advocated as a member of the parliament for an industrial policy in Europe. And I have the feeling that some of the politicians these days are also advocating for an industrial policy in Europe. Are you doing that as well for the hydrogen economy? And what actually is an industrial policy?
Yeah, many years industrial policy was not well perceived in Europe. So the Anglo-Saxon and also the Rhine capitalist view was not to support industries too much, but to create a framework. Whereas the French view was really to they call it planification, to plan a little bit more on a long roadmap, some policies for industries. I think in the meanwhile, everybody has understood that Europe cannot survive with its industry in a competition with China. Let's call it the global East, because China has teamed up with Russia big time, and Russia is the fueling station for China. China is the brain of this conglomerate. On the other side of the Atlantic, we have now an old partner who has become a real competitor.
Yes,
And
indeed.
both dismiss WTO rules, both don't respect all these rules that we build up globally in order to create these frameworks. So we are urged ourselves as Europeans to look into industrial policy. And this is what it is. You need to define targets. So first of all, you need to define which technologies you want to be in, you want to be successful in. And the EU has done that. The EU
Hmm.
has defined clean tech. So every clean tech as strategic. And they also have issued a law, the Net Zero Industry Act. And thank God, hydrogen is part of it, especially electrolyzers. And this is where we now fit into the upcoming Clean Industrial Act. So this is a real act of industrial policy, follows the Green Deal, which was the first step into this direction, setting rules. Now certain industries get clear support, not only by regulation and by funding, but also by facilitating partnerships. We call this lead markets, and this is exactly the current situation we are in, based on the rules we build up to create lead markets, for instance, in green fertilizers, green refining, and green steel. And all this needs a lot of hydrogen, which is why it's so important for us.
Hey, I'm Björn from Hyfindr. I'm your host of the podcast The Hydrogen Leader. In this format, we want to inspire future hydrogen leaders. Please do me a favor and subscribe to our channel. If you like the content, it helps a lot to grow the channel. Thank you very much. I still think that there is a difference in the understanding of industrial policy in our sense, because when you look into China, South Korea, and the US, you have the feeling it is going also beyond. There you have strategic companies that are pulling entire industries. And I have the feeling that in these regions, government is collaborating with companies directly to pull the entire industry, whereas in Europe, also in Germany, we have this being neutral, everybody is treated away. So you have a policy and then people apply, and those who are best educated to get the money, they are the supported. But I think that there internationally, this policy thing goes even beyond that, and where the collaboration between government and powerful companies, it's much closer. Would you buy into that assessment?
Absolutely. Your observation is totally right. I mean, in China, you see that the government, well, based on this French planification, tries to have even 3, 5 competing companies, Chinese companies, running against each other, and then they choose the best of them, and then they
Yes.
basically support the best of them. In the US, we are currently seeing something which is, I would say, extremely dangerous,
Mhm.
where I call it post-democratic tech
Okay.
imperialism, where some lucky few tech barons influence big time the state, the government. It's not that the government goes first; it's that these guys basically go first and lead the
Yes.
government into certain direction. So this is a complete change.
Yeah.
And if Europe leaves this unanswered and just continues, as you described, by, well, trying to be neutral, this is not working. This is definitely a big, we call it cul-de-sac,
Yeah.
Sackgasse, cul-de-sac for Europe. And that's why it's a very crucial time now that we need, as hydrogen sector, to help Europe to re-industrialize. because at the moment we are observing that the decarbonization is much slower than the deindustrialization. So certain rules that we imposed on us to decarbonize have a detrimental effect on our industry. So industry shrinks down and decarbonization doesn't shrink in the same speed. That's very dangerous, but we are already in that process.
Yeah, exactly. So I also think that we should not forget about our values, but we somehow have to play the global game, right? So you also have been on, I have the feeling, every COP meeting. I think there was a COP meeting last year in Azerbaijan. Now it will be in Brazil. I personally have a not yet clear view, and you might be able to help me about these meetings, because in the public perception, you get to know about it when people negotiate about the closing statement. And I ask myself, as being raised, that actions matter more than words, what is the value of this closing statement at the end? Don't we need more than closing statements? We need actions. So you have been there in the circle of power. What is your inside view on these meetings?
There are also actions that are taken, but indeed, the COP meetings are the rare global meetings where leaders from really around the globe come together and discuss the current angle, the current ideas everybody has on world climate. And this is very important as such, because we all know that climate issues are global. So it doesn't make sense to decarbonize in Europe, whereas in other parts of the world the CO2 emissions go up. So sometimes it's even more efficient to invest into decarbonization in these part of the world where there is still a lot of coal and bulk, rather than concentrate on areas that are already doing well. So to be clear, to decarbonize Global East, China and Russia makes more sense than to be very, very explicit in Europe. And that is already one important step to understand where we are wrong, also as Europeans. So to be ethically on the right side is fine, but to try to impose these ethical standards, the sustainability standards, only on yourself, although you are already less polluting than others, doesn't make sense. It's better to invest our money into other parts of the world. And this is what can be discussed and is discussed at the COP meetings. And slowly I see that there is a better understanding of each other. Think about the islands, the islands that say clearly and loudly that they are endangered by global warming and the seas going up. But on the other hand, we also have progress in standardization. So to set standards, to agree upon standards, is also an action. It's not just declaration, it's an action. And I'm very, very happy to have seen the last two COPs. So the last one, as you said, was in Baku. The one before was in Dubai. That we achieved to agree upon some basic standards in the decarbonization of hydrogen. So the hydrogen sector needs this transparency. Where does the hydrogen come from? How is it produced? What's the emission all over the supply chain? And we have that. And many states, many important governments signed up for it. We call it the International Hydrogen Trade Forum. That's the That's the
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the concrete arm that has been built up starting in Dubai, basically. And Sharm el Sheikh was the first meeting, and in Dubai was a real formal meeting, so the foundation of this International Hydrogen Trade Forum. And in Baku, we got even a hydrogen declaration. So that's important, which now leads into a global hydrogen summit, the first UN hydrogen summit in September this year in Vienna. All this would have been possible without these progresses we made over these on these COPs. And
so what you're saying, if you agreed with relevant people to have this forum last time in Baku, and now it's really taking place to push forward the hydrogen economy even stronger.
And even globally.
Globally.
Globally. And we shouldn't underestimate as Europeans that we are quite inspiring for others.
Right.
But sometimes they then pick it up and are much faster than we are. So our inspiration worked very well in Saudi Arabia, in the Emirates, and especially in India. So
Yeah.
the European Commission, for instance, to give you an example, will travel collectively, the whole college. So Mrs. von der Leyen and all her
Yeah.
26 colleagues as commissioners will travel jointly in February this year to India, to Delhi.
Right.
And the Indian side is consulting us what they can discuss with their European partners on hydrogen. And very concretely, we talk about, to give you this example, about fertilizers, because the 5 million tons of green hydrogen that the Indians will produce are a very, very important
Yeah.
trade good for us Europeans, because we just stopped to take fertilizers from Russia. And
Yeah.
that's
It's
important
needed.
to have a new partner. And this is geostrategy. This is of utmost importance also for us Europeans. By the way, they need electrolyzers, and we need a partner to scale up electrolyzers economically, so industrially and economically. And India might be the perfect partner for that, also in order to hedge the influence spheres and the capacities, the dominance of China. And here you go. All these efforts would not have been possible if we wouldn't have seen each other at these COPs and discussed, next to electricity and renewables, hydrogen. So the hydrogen
Right.
pledge this last year in Baku was a super success. I was extremely
Okay,
happy.
I didn't know that. This
Yeah,
is
yeah.
quite interesting also for our audience, because sometimes you have this public perception if you're not close enough to what is really going on. Speaking about passion, Jorgo, I know you for many years now, and I'm very happy about that. And you're helping in all sort of respect. But I also noticed a slight change in the type of speeches that you are doing. And in the early years, when I listened to your speech, I had the feeling that you were demanding change because, from your point of view, it makes sense. And in the last speeches, I have the feeling that you try to inspire more. Is that assessment correct, or are you still the same?
I think I'm still the same, but you are right that giving the flame of inspiration to others is sometimes more important than just conveying messages and facts.
Yeah,
Why is it so?
exactly.
Because we see that hydrogen has many friends, but also some people who wouldn't sign up for it. Mainly people who come from or the very fossil side, so they see hydrogen as a threat to fossil products, of course, because if you decarbonize and you use hydrogen as a gas or its derivatives, you replace oil and fossil oil and gas. But also on the renewable side, especially on the side of grids, power grids, and electricity, we have some people who don't like hydrogen because they need money for their grids, for their power grids. Power grids are extremely expensive, and the combination of power grid and hydrogen grids and gas grids brings the price of the overall grid down. But they don't want to hear that. They feel hydrogen is a competitor. They want the money for their grids. Sometimes because it's ignorance, sometimes because it's very well known that hydrogen is an enabler and takes some part of their cake. This is why you need to inspire the decision makers. So decision
So
makers,
I have a recommendation for you, because the biggest inspiration that we had in Europe over the last decade, I think, was Greta Thunberg sitting in front of the government with a shield. So will we see Jorgo sitting next to the door of the European Parliament with a shield, more hydrogen? More seriously, I ask myself, because you know so many people, did you ever get to know her? Because I think we had by that time somehow a movement towards a greener future. And it is somehow that I feel guilty that it slipped away a little bit. It was inspiring. And as you were, let's say, talking about trying to inspire more, can we learn from the youth to inspire instead of to demand?
First of all, I was the same inspired as you are, and especially our children were and
Yeah,
are. So I have 4 daughters. I was proud when my two eldest daughters sent me pictures from the Fridays for Future demonstrations,
right.
and they were basically on the shoulders of somebody and were protesting. I was very proud, and I was very inspired myself. On the other hand, we all know that this movement was building very much upon few technologies only. So,
Okay.
if you look into it, it's mainly non-combustion technologies, which is battery, which is heat pump, which is solar, and there is a very good idea behind it. So, yes, batteries and heat pumps can, as a demand response, help to have more renewables and can store the energy. But honestly, it was not working over
Hmm.
the last years. It did not fly. I mean, we see a lot of battery cars in some countries that can afford it, like Norway with nearly
Yes.
100%, but it's one of the richest countries in the world. We see that in other parts, batteries and especially heat pumps did not pick up. Um, and why is it so? Because I think, and that's what we can learn, we try to pressure it too much. So
Okay.
if you try to turn the screw, but you put too much power, the
It
screw
breaks.
breaks.
Yes.
And that this is what happened, especially we both know Germany best. So in Germany, the heat pump example and the
Mm.
whole legislation on heating showed us what should definitely be avoided. So to pressure too much, and this is the kind of inspiration we should pass on. So to be inspired, to go all the steps, but not to pressure too much. To go the steps in a realistic manner.
Yeah.
And this is what I definitely want to do for hydrogen. So sometimes people tell me, where are all these hydrogen projects already bringing profit? I say, come on, you need to be super realistic. Um, do you know how long it took oil and gas to have and coal to have a market penetration of only 10% globally? How many decades?
Yeah,
What did it take?
I know because I have listened to your speech. It's more or less 100 years, right?
Yeah. It's many decades, and we are in year number 5 of the hydrogen strategy of Europe. And of course, um, we cannot be where the others are. Even renewables have less than 7%, around 7% global market penetration, and they are in their 20th year. So
Yeah.
I'm not asking for a long, long time period. I'm just asking for realism, and this is
Right.
what we need also to learn. Realistic, step-by-step approach, and it didn't slip away. I
Okay.
it didn't slip away. So it just
Okay,
turned
so it's
into
still
something.
there, but we might not see it. And what I have learned when I was talking to my kids about this movement back in the days, and by that time I was working still with Mercedes, I learned that you had these big AMG engines where the dads are no longer cool to drive it, right? So this has also sometimes an impact to the family, right? Where if the young understand what is going on, it also has an impact to the fathers and mothers, right? So
But
coming,
can I
yes,
say
please.
one thing on that because it's important. So last European elections, I was talking to my elder daughters that already vote, and the same who did who protested with Fridays for Future before some years before. And I was super surprised when they told me what they and their friends discuss whom to vote. I mean,
Right.
we have the secret ballot, so I cannot disclose what they voted. But lots of young people in their environment go for the conservative parties because they want. And I said, why are you young people going for conservative parties? I said, because we want to have a job security. That
Hmm.
was European elections half a year ago. I
Right.
talk to them now. We have elections upcoming in Germany, and they go even for right extreme. And I'm super, super shocked about this.
Yes.
So what I want to say is, if you turn the screw and break it, you risk to get undemocratic developments like we see them global east I mentioned already, and
Yeah,
other side of the Atlantic as well. So we need to be super super careful, because these
yeah,
young guys not only think about a climate future, they also think about their jobs. And
yeah. So lessons learned, inspiration is good, but without the buy-in, it does not help, right?
correct.
So coming to inspiration, because I think the story of Hydrogen Europe is inspiration in itself. I think you founded it 9 years ago, and you were the first employee, basically. And Stephen and I, we founded Hyfindr 4 years ago, and I can still recall, despite we have grown significantly back in the days, how it was. How was it, Jorgo, when you were sitting alone in your office, have terminated your political career and said, okay, I build Hydrogen Europe now? What were the challenges back in the day when you were alone?
So first of all, I found myself in a sort of a cloak room, so cupboard, because the very first office was really, really very, very small. We were in a consultancy. We were part of a consultancy, but I had to be separated from the collaborators, because technically Hydrogen Europe at that time was a client of that consultancy,
Okay.
and I was the first. Back then we called it Secretary General, and the first and only employee. I felt squeezed into this cloakroom, I have to say. I was not, I was not very happy. But I
You
saw
were on a mission. You were on a mission.
I saw this mission, and I said, first of all, I need to get out of the cloakroom, next office, next. And then I saw with the weeks and months how we grew. So it seems that the mission, the flame,
Yeah.
this idea could inspire others, so that more and more companies joined Hydrogen Europe, because Hydrogen Europe is an association. Yes,
Yes.
we have a partnership with the Commission with regards to the joint undertaking. It's called the Clean Hydrogen Partnership at the moment. It was called Fuel Cell Hydrogen Joint Undertaking back then. That's a partnership. But the partnership only works with the industrial arm that needs to be built up of corporates. And so I needed to attract corporates. And back then we were around 50, 50, mainly research innovation oriented companies, not hydrogen as a market, but as a innovation idea. And now it has grown tenfold. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you can imagine that, of course, managing so many members, also trying to please their ideas, you need to be service oriented. You need to understand
Yeah.
what they
Exactly. You
want.
need to get clients.
You need to get clients, and you need to satisfy the clients. So
Yes.
that's why I also had to build up, after being a politician, starting to be a real manager, build up a team and
Yeah.
run a team. And with all its challenges, I have to say, every day on an everyday business basis, it it has grown, and it has successfully grown. And
I think you are now a real organization, and what I know from the business side, bigger organizations normally have annual targets, and just like politicians have political targets, I ask myself, do you also, as an association, have, let's say, influence targets where you say, okay, this year we will concentrate on this, and if yes, what are you now concentrating on in the year 2025?
it's a very timely question, and I'm extremely also proud to be in a position to answer that very positively, because what you have asked 2 years ago, yes, there were targets, but they were still not clear enough,
Hmm.
because hydrogen was still growing, and now it needs to be implemented. Now we have all the legal instruments at hand that we build up the last 5 years. Yes, the board of Hydrogen Europe met in January,
Right?
board of directors, and we have a clear list of targets. It's a long list. It's a list that spans from the lead markets. I will elaborate on the lead markets in a second, to establish them, to overcome the chicken and egg dilemma, to the manifestation of hydrogen in the future budget of Europe. the budget. We call it the multi-annual framework, financial framework, MFF, multi-annual
Of European organizations or what?
of the Commission. So
Of the
the
Commission,
the
okay,
money that the Commission gets mainly from member states
right,
is built up on a compromise between the member states, of course, and the Commission. The European Parliament also has a role to play, but it's for 7 years, multi-annual.
right,
And these 7 years will be decided this year. In the last MFF, no hydrogen mentioned. Of course, clean techs, and we want hydrogen to be mentioned. We want a line in that MFF that says there will be definitely a budget for hydrogen projects. So you see, it's different targets that we came up with, also to start a very strategic communication, not just the communication, why is this and that law important? No, also to understand, I'll give you an example, strategically, why plastic. We also have a COP on plastic that failed the last 2 months ago in Busan in Korea.
yeah,
Why plastic is an issue where hydrogen can help. We can collect plastic in the seas, and we
okay,
can, with pyrolysis, turn this plastic into clean hydrogen and carbon solid. And this carbon solid is important for graphite, for carbon char, to be used in agriculture. So these elements are part of a strategic communication that also needs to start. That's also one of the KPIs, the key performance indicators for this year. Yes, we have that, and I'm also in a phase where our whole team, we have now round about 50 people, will on a real quarterly basis measure where are we in fulfilling this. So we have now fine-tuned our self-monitoring mechanism, and I can
okay.
say yes, we have the targets, and yes, we are on a good way.
Okay, I'm confident that you are driven to achieve that. So we asked prior to this recording, Jorgo, also our community whether they have questions, and what we have basically received a question here, who asks, with all the money from Europe, are there projects that are still successful or very successful after the public funding is gone? So because there is obviously, as you know, the negative thing is much louder reported, and things are going well, does not need to be reported. Are there any projects where you can say, yes, we supported the initial start, and now it's really clear that they can fly? Is there a project that comes into your mind?
Yes, there are projects, of course, in the field of public transport, so buses. These
Okay,
projects, because people like these hydrogen buses, they work. The point here is that the price for hydrogen has gone up. So you could clearly see Russians invade Ukraine, and oil and especially gas crisis comes up, energy prices gone up. That affected also us. So these energy prices were not helping anybody. But we have very successful projects in greening refineries already.
all
It's on a
right,
smaller scale, but it works. So they were publicly funded, and now these refineries replace their gray hydrogen with green hydrogen that
yeah,
they produce on site, in Wesseling, Köln-Wesseling, for instance, and they get the carbon credits. So that's Germany. In the Netherlands, we have the same thing. They don't get the carbon credits because the government didn't give it to them. So that's my
okay,
message here. My message is that nascent technologies, nascent industries are very much depending on political decisions. So
yeah,
if you take all the trillions of subsidies for fossil and compare how few the subsidies, how low the level of subsidies is for hydrogen, and then you ask, why don't you compete with them? I mean, it's a funny question. It's not fair the way
yeah,
politicians treat different technologies. That's why we need protection. I say it clearly: protection for some years, like the renewables got it for with the feed-in tariffs, etc. And only then these projects will fly. And we are not there yet. Yes, there are.
I have an easy solution for you as a lawyer, because what I have learned that in China there is now a new law in place which officially recognizes hydrogen as a source of energy, and this seems to have a big impact. So with all these support measures on oil and natural gas, I think you can put a so-called legal fiction in the law that says hydrogen is also a gas and all the support measures should supply as well. So that
Very simple.
as a lawyer might be a quick fix to give real power and to level the playing field.
I like it.
What I also think is, as you know, I'm from Germany, and when I was raised, I learned that the wind and the solar industry was built by our doctors. What do I mean by that? Because those are the wealthy people who like to reduce their taxes, and there was a rule saying if you buy a wind turbine, you can reduce your taxes. What strikes me is that there are no such tax incentives in the hydrogen economy, because if you give tax incentives, those will do it who are the most powerful. And everybody has a tax advisor, but nobody has a public funding advisor. And I think it's so easy to implement a favorable tax scheme, which sometimes is in place with the old economy. So it's much faster, and it's on a yearly basis providing investments. So why is nobody pursuing this tax path?
Well, it has been pursued in the US, as you know.
Yeah.
The US is working with tax incentives much better, much more intensively. They work better than subsidies because with subsidies is bureaucracy. You need to make the selection. Whom are you subsidizing? When do you get it back? And tax, easy. No? You just reduce taxes. However, in Europe, tax policies are linked to the national governments and not to the EU. So, of course, you could argue, why are the Germans not doing it? And well, because there
I
are.
have heard what I've heard is that the fluctuation is bigger. Instead of, if you have a defined budget that you can end out, you don't know how many tax credits will be used. But okay, get it. So more or less, this is happening on the national level,
Yeah,
and not on European level.
not on
Okay.
European level. That's the problem. Otherwise, you are absolutely right. It's the best tool. Yeah.
One on the strategic part, I wanted to point to one thing that I think you are also highlighting. Europe wants to jump from the status quo to green hydrogen directly, whereas, for example, in Japan, as far as I know, there is more a stepwise transition towards green hydrogen, acknowledging that blue and gray hydrogen is not something which is bad. How do you see this? Are we now over-regulating and demanding green hydrogen and not giving the chance to do it stepwise and I would refer to not pushing the screw too much. What is your take on that?
I think Europe has too much of ideology always burdening our thinking. And sometimes the enemy of the good is the best. So sometimes we go for best solutions, which in theory are best, but in practice are not working. We currently, I'm very open to you about that, are, well, very, very mad about delegated acts that have been issued that define green hydrogen in a way that is absolutely not doable. I mean, imagine that the Green Deputy Minister of Germany was here in my office telling me that the additionality principle is now working in his constituency, Emden. So he has wind producers that produce too much of electricity. It cannot be put into the grid. They would love to produce hydrogen with electrolyzers. They can't because it's old windmills, it's not additional. So,
Okay.
what kind of crazy minds have that been that have said green hydrogen needs to come from windmills that are younger than 24 months? So I'm not going into the
I did.
nitty-gritty of these
No.
delegated acts, but I get complaints every single day. And I warned the Commission very early. I said, this is not flying, this is not working. I saw that also from America, there was a push to go into that direction, which was not now, of course, taken off the table from Trump. So now we are, there in the situation where we need to apply this delegated act.
Right.
Hydrogen is 5 times as expensive as it should be.
Yes.
Plus, we don't have delegated acts on the blue or the other colors. We call it low carbon.
Right.
That's a crazy situation. If you ask me,
That's part of your target.
Yeah, but I cannot change the machinery room of the Commission. So the
Okay.
political leadership that has been inspired. So Mrs. von der Leyen, Mr. Timmermans in the past, now it's Teresa Ribera. They are absolutely in favor of hydrogen. They set political targets, but it has to be implemented and to put into law by their machinery room, so by their DGs. And honestly and clearly, there have been people who have basically blocked it. But they knew they were smart enough to put sand into the engine, and that's what happened. And if we don't overcome this quite soon, I'm very, very concerned that we will not make it. So also importers to Europe, they complain. They say we cannot comply by these rules because, for instance, Indians don't have bidding zones. It says you need to have the hydrogen has to come from the electricity producer from the same bidding zone. They say we have one Indian grid, we have one bidding zone. So it's so complicated. What I can say is the following. The pragmatic approach that you see in Japan, that you see also in some parts of Europe, especially in Eastern Europe, this is the approach that will win.
Okay.
And I'm extremely pleased to tell you that the first meetings we had this year with the new commissioner, so the 5 years back were quite ideologic, and the machinery room in the commission has done what it did. But the new commissioner is from Denmark. He's super pragmatic. He says, I don't want this ideology anymore. I want to bring the costs down, and whatever hampers that needs to be removed. At the same time, of course, they don't want to change the law. So we need to be quite inventive. We need to invent now a way, a compromise that allows a more flexible approach, let's say a regime for certain markets, not abolishing the rules, but creating for a transition period transition rules that are more flexible and allow us to kick off the hydrogen economy.
Yeah. So I noticed something, Jorgo. You said you were so angry, and on the one hand side, you were so proud. And as a leader, and as you know, our podcast is also dealing with this leadership thing because we want to inspire people like you who are in the spotlight with a lot of pressure. So how do you overcome situations of frustrations? You will have also frustrations sometimes. And what is your routine to overcome these situations? What keeps you going? And this is on that side. And what do you do when you say, okay, I did something really great? How do you party?
Well, I think this is, it goes together. So if you do something great, you need to have to put it into your own refrigerator in order to take it out to motivate you for the next big step.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I think
This is clever. Yeah.
I think this anger that you just heard,
Yeah.
and I think anger is sometimes also an important tool to wake you up.
A force. Yeah. A force. Yeah.
So, but at the same time, frustration that might come up, this needs to be counterbalanced by real successes. And there are these real successes. Sometimes I don't believe what we achieve.
What was your biggest success, according to the view of Jorgo, in your professional life, beyond founding Hydrogen Europe?
Yes, I think that we got the hydrogen strategy on European level
2020,
within basically 3 months
All
after
right.
we talked to the commission leadership. The commissioner himself, the first executive vice president, Franz Timmermans, said, well, let's give it some 6 months. It was after COVID broke out.
Mhm.
Of course, different conditions, but we made it within 3 months.
So
And that
it was a good elevator pitch.
yes, that was a good elevator pitch, and it was also a very strong leadership by Franz Timmermans on the other hand, and by Ursula
Yeah.
von der Leyen, because both supported this idea. Um, and that was the biggest success, I have to say, that in such a short period we could translate ideas, concept into a strategy that then definitely was translated into laws. And only this delegated act is a problem. All the rest, we can be super proud of all the legislation we got, which was built on this strategy. So that was the biggest moment when we got the strategy to say,
Oh, it's
wow.
congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, in light of time, and you are a very busy person, I have three remaining interesting questions. You know the concept, and I think you promoted of this contract for difference. And there is this H2 Global, which did the first auction, and a consortium in Egypt won. But it's about sourcing ammonia. And according to the idea of this tendering process, green hydrogen will come later. I ask myself, while I understand that also the trade needs to be activated, isn't this taking simply too long? So, isn't there again this interest of treating everybody fair? But if an auction would provide and supply hydrogen, let's say in 5 years' time, it's a lot of administration to get there. So, first, to please shortly explain, very shortly, the concept of a contract for difference and what is your view on these tendering tools?
So contract for difference is nothing else than a state guarantee to pay the delta, the difference between the fossil price and the renewable price. So
Yes.
if you are a BASF, or you're a big chemical company and you need hydrogen for your ammonia, for your fertilizers, um, the gray would cost you some €2 per kilo gray hydrogen, which is fossil based, and green would cost you possibly 6, at the moment
Okay.
8,
Hmm.
8 per kilo. That's quite a substantial difference. The price will go down definitely, but at the moment somehow you need to cover this. Now, if you ask a bulk producer like Saudi Arabia to help you to bring that from 8 to 6, you still have €4 that you need to cover. That's Habeck, or the future energy minister and finance minister, of course, that says, okay, I cover the difference via contract for difference, but it's a breathing concept. So price goes down, you get less. You just get the delta, the difference. I like this concept because it
Okay.
risks all the off-takers, and the off-takers are the most important partners at the moment in the hydrogen sector, because without offtake, nothing will work. And that is why, and I now jump to the auction, the combination between the auctions that give a price signal in order to understand where is this green price at the moment, is so important. The auction tells us, aha, what is the difference that we need to cover. You talked a little bit negatively about the processed hydrogen in products like fertilizers or steel. No need to be negative about it, because whether the hydrogen is transported, is produced and then transported via pipeline or via ship, liquid hydrogen, or whether it's processed in iron ore or in fertilizers or in refining projects, it's similar. So the hydrogen effect is there. So it's absolutely logical that we go first for markets that process hydrogen, that use hydrogen, and green the product. And that's why I come back to this lead markets. So lead markets in fertilizer, in refining, in green steel. We are focused with our work of Hydrogen Europe on that this year, because we understand if we create a flexible regime for these markets and we kick off the production of hydrogen for these products, that's where it starts. And after that, bigger hydrogen production that is then transported via pipeline will follow. But you need to kick it off, and you only can kick it off if you have a client, a customer that buys that immediately.
All right. So, coming to a close and ending on a high note, I have thought about what is the best question to end on, and I want to ask you, dear Jorgo, what is the next big thing for Jorgo? Is there something that the entire hydrogen economy should be excited about?
Well, the next big thing definitely is this big UN conference in September, but that's
Right?
just another conference. However, during that conference, we want to already present, like also in COP30 in Brazil, that the Global Fertilizer Alliance, so we call it Future Fertilizer Mission, has worked in order to fight both decarbonization and hunger.
Right.
And second, I alluded already to plastic. We want that pyrolysis, plasma pyrolysis, to fight also this other global plague, plastic. They have now found microplastic in the brain of people.
Yeah,
No
it's
good.
crazy.
No good.
No
It's
good.
crazy.
No good. No.
No, no, no. And we need really to have solutions here. And that's the next big thing, to show people hydrogen is not just this theoretical concept. There are very practical aspects of hydrogen that help us to make the world circular, a better and a cleaner place, and creating jobs at the same time, and reducing the climate risk. Wow. So all this can be done, but to showcase this with concrete examples, fascinating young people demonstrating for hydrogen, and not only uh, uh, Fridays for Future against the
Yeah.
climate. That's what we want to do. And I'm confident that we are getting there. But I need to motivate myself every
Well,
single day again and again. But this idea,
so
this objective is motivation enough.
So I'm confident that we can motivate some people who are listening to our podcast with your speeches. So the big takeaway for me today is hydrogen is enabler, Jorgo is enabler, and we are enabling leaders to pull this forward. Thank you very much, dear Jorgo. I wish you lots of success in leading the hydrogen economy in Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation, and happy to continue our talk even next year.
We will do. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye bye.